right, welcome everyone to a very special episode. This is a collab episode between the Let's Get Vulnerable podcast with myself, Dr. Morgan, and
Tell me some more with Dr. Sheva. I'm so excited about this.
I am so excited. For those of you who don't know, Sheva is my friend in real life. We have been friends for quite a while now.
Yeah. Back in the day, we did postdoc together.
Yes, we did postdoc at UCSD.
Yeah.
We were just reminiscing about a presentation that we did together there.
Yeah, we were actually talking, we did a presentation on effective communication, was it?
Yes.
Or was it assertive communication?
Yes.
And how far we've come, and we both focus so much on communication. I love it.
Yes. Dr. Sheva, you have taught me so much about assertiveness.
The feeling is mutual.
And what I love about you is just your openness about your own journey and how much you talk about confidence and being able to communicate well and how that helps you have great relationships.
Oh, thank you so much. No, yeah, I think we're both very much aligned on just the importance of like focusing on yourself, feeling really assertive, confident, empowered to like have the relationships that we want. So I admire that in you too. Thank you.
Yes.
But I would love to talk with you just more about confidence. Let's talk about, I know we like both love talking about relationships. What can we do better? We're both really huge on like self-growth and empowering other women. So I'm curious, like when you think about ways to be more confident in a romantic relationship, what are some things that maybe you think about or consider?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people get wrong is they'll base their self-worth or their self-confidence in someone else and how someone else is treating them, right? Like, especially if you're dating, you're going to get rejected.
Yeah. Totally.
So if you are connecting your self-worth with you being rejected, that is not going to go well. So for me, it's all about you have to take ownership, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're not outsourcing your self-worth.
Yeah.
You're creating daily routines for yourself that help you build confidence within yourself.
Right.
And not expecting it's like, oh, he didn't text me back today, so that must mean I'm not good enough, right? It's like this is the journey, girl. Like taking ownership, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I love that because I feel like someone who can, for me, like someone who can take that accountability, can take that responsibility in any relationship. I feel like that within itself demonstrates such confidence because there's vulnerability in acknowledging that, hey, maybe I didn't do something perfectly and yet I'm still good. And I'm still desired and I'm still worthy, which I know you also just focus so much on. But I think there's just this like power in owning our own stuff and our own journey and being okay with how it may come across to other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you and I both talk about this. I think we would say to the audience that a relationship, a good, healthy relationship is actually going to make you more yourself.
Yeah.
So I think like a sign that you're feeling confident and you're in healthy relationships is when it's adding value and you're showing up even more authentically.
Yeah. I love that. No showing. So I focus a ton on, which I know similar. I mean, we're so similar in so many ways.
Yes.
So I think we approach it in our own unique ways of how to have those healthier relationships. But I'm all about like being more your authentic self, being more intentional. And you're so right. I think a sign of confidence is when you can be more authentically you. And, like, you know, what comes up for me is, and a lot of my friends and family members will laugh at this, and you know this, but just like, I think I'm huge on communication. And I think that's how you communicate things that's most important, but like still communicating what's true for you. So when I think about self-confidence, I think a part of it is like owning ourselves, but also feeling comfortable in expressing who we are, our needs, what we're looking for, our desires with other people.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think you and I both love assertiveness.
Yeah.
Assertive communication. This has changed my life. I know it's changed your life too.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Pizookie with you at BJ's.
You totally can. I mean, who knows? You know what the funny thing is, Morgan, is so Morgan's mentioning an experience many years ago where she viewed me as being so assertive, but I
Yes.
feel like,
I
uh,
have to tell them the experience.
yeah, please
Okay.
do.
We were at the restaurant. We did not have good service at this restaurant, and I had just gotten to know you. It was, like, brand new and knowing each
Right.
other, and you made sure that they knew that the service wasn't good, and I remember I was so inspired by you, and
Well, I
then we
made
got the
them know
free
very
dessert.
kindly. Kindly, I communicated, but
It was
yes.
kindly. It was kind, and it was direct,
Yes.
and we got this awesome free dessert, and I was like, "I need to be more like Sheva."
And you know what's so funny is I actually, especially then, I didn't even see myself as being this assertive person. Like, of course, I recognize what you're talking about, but I'm like, it just goes to show like how we're oftentimes perceived in such different ways. Like, often people
Yes.
are able to see things in us that just feel so differently than what I felt internally. I felt like, oh,
Yes.
I need to be even more assertive, or I need to, speak up more and all of these things. But
Well, and I think one thing I know is true that just because you're assertive at a restaurant
yeah,
doesn't mean that's how you show up
totally.
with your family, your friends,
That's true
your
too.
partner, right? So it's
That's
like
true.
I think a lot of people feel assertive in certain areas of their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
But yeah, you nailed it at the
Yeah, with my
restaurant.
dessert and the food, I was quite comfortable being assertive.
Yes.
But I think for the audience, I think what I would hope that people take away is, similar to what you said, assertiveness, you may feel super confident expressing your needs, your desires in one area of your life and struggle in maybe other areas of your life. And also, I think the great news is that if you can start practicing those same skills in those other areas, like with time and practice and like maybe unlearning some beliefs about what we have as to what it may mean to be
Yes.
assertive in certain areas, like you can strengthen that skill. It's like any other muscle, right? Like we were talking
Yes.
about this today of like just so many ways that you've become so much more assertive.
Yeah.
And for me too, in areas that I couldn't even imagine being assertive in. So I think if I hope that people know, like, even if you're like, oh, I wish I could be more assertive, or like there are areas that I just don't feel comfortable at all, or I question myself, transfer that same muscle in that other area.
Yes. I love that you mentioned beliefs
Yeah.
because I think that's so key. I think
Yeah.
about beliefs about relationships,
Yeah.
and it's easy for people to confuse assertiveness with
Yeah,
aggressiveness.
totally.
They think that they're being aggressive when actually they're just being assertive.
Yeah.
Because if we understand assertive communication, it really is my needs matter and your needs matter, right?
Yeah.
I want to understand your needs and I want you to understand mine.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful way to be, right?
Totally. It's like I win and you win. Like we're both
Yes.
winners here. And I think
Yes.
yeah, when assertive communication is done right, right? Like it's direct, it's clear, and it's kind, right? And you're
Yes.
thinking about that other person's experience as well. When you said beliefs and just like the thoughts that we have, and how the fact that it feels aggressive. I want to acknowledge, I think early on in someone's journey, it may still feel aggressive for you, right? Like
Yes.
when you're being assertive because it feels foreign. Like
Yes.
I'm now expressing my needs in ways that I've never. And I think when it's done right, of course, checking in with yourself to like make sure that it feels comfortable to a certain extent. But I think when it's done right with time, like that foreign feeling will feel less and less. It will feel more natural. That's what
Absolutely.
I've seen in my own experience, and also just with clients. I think it takes some
Yeah.
time. And
And I do think when you address the core beliefs of
yeah,
realizing, "Oh, I am worthy of taking up space.
yeah,
I am worthy of expressing my needs. I'm worthy of being in relationships where people are curious
yeah,
about my needs."
right,
And when you develop those core beliefs, that supports you in being
right.
more assertive as well.
And people in relationships where people respond appropriately to your needs, especially when they're different than theirs. I feel like that's so
Yes,
key.
it is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think tuning in, I'm like huge on tuning into the stories that we tell ourselves and being curious about it for ourselves. Like, what is the story that I have around relationships, but also similar to what you said of like the stories about who I am, what it means to ask for something additional, what it means to express needs. I think so often those stories just come from maybe childhood experiences
Mhm.
or things that were passed on to us, or just our own discomfort in taking up that space or maybe upsetting someone. So I would, yeah, I think it's really important to just be curious. And I think I just do see that as like a foundational part of being able to feel confident in authentically showing up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then that's the only way we know what relationships are right for us.
Yeah.
Because I always think it's like, why would you want to be with someone if you can't be your authentic self
Yeah.
with that person? So you have to be assertive, you have to express your needs, show up authentically. And then that's how you gather the data on who is right
Right.
for you.
Yeah.
If you're being a chameleon in all your relationships, you're not going to find the right person because you're not showing up authentically. So,
Yeah.
this is why people always say it's that cliche of like, work on yourself first.
That's what I was gonna say. It's, yeah, it's coming back to you, but also it's like, you getting to know, like, if you're unsure of like who your authentic self is, like, who am I? What do I like? What is my limit? What are my boundaries? I think it's really being curious with yourself, and like it's some trial and error that you do to really get to know yourself in different situations. And I think in that process, like to your earlier point, we will be rejected. Like when we're
Yes.
authentic, like in a lot of, of course, rejection is hard, but I also think that's giving you information of like, well, I was showing up as me. And if
Yes.
this didn't work out, then great. Like I can now go to and be me and see it may work out with someone else. Right. So,
Yeah. And the growth edge for everyone listening, the growth edge here is when you're rejected, being able to reframe and say, thank goodness I have that information that relationship isn't right for me. The dating space is now cleared and I can go on and I can date other people. So I think
yeah.
that's like the biggest growth
Right.
area is how you respond to rejection. It truly is redirection to
Yeah.
what is meant for you.
Yeah.
And when we back to self-confidence, when we haven't outsourced our self-worth, we can do that so much more easily.
Right.
It's like,
No,
I
for
know
sure.
I'm enough and this relationship wasn't right for me.
Yeah.
Both of those can be true.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm huge on, always just being curious and coming back to yourself of like, if there was, maybe you did feel like you were authentic and you were still like, we've all had, probably, I mean, I'll talk about my own experience. Like and I would have, I'm sure
You
you would
know mine,
probably,
Shiva.
yeah, I was
You
gonna
know
say
all
you
the
probably
dating history.
agree to this, but I'm sure there have been instances like for both of us where we've been authentic and the person maybe has rejected us or hasn't worked out, and it's
Yeah,
been super upsetting, right?
of
Like
course.
it's still disappointing. That doesn't mean like I that's the piece that I want to take, that I hope we communicate, is like it can still feel disappointing, but
Yes.
also, even that can be information to us, right? Like, was
Yes.
there a part of me that maybe I want to fine tune? I want to show up differently. Was there a part of me as to like, what did I find disappointing about this experience? What can I take away? Like, what was I attracted to that makes this
Yes. Oh
experience
my gosh.
disappointing?
I have a Dr. Morgan quote for you.
Tell me.
There
Oh, I love that. Like, tell me.
There's no failure in dating. There's only learning.
And that's true. Honey, that is just in. I love that because that's just in life. I feel like, I've been focusing a lot on this idea of failing.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we can just see, there may be experiences we wish we didn't have, and yet is there information that we can take? And maybe the
Yes.
information is, I wish I didn't have it, but
Yeah.
I don't want to like positively reframe everything, but I do agree with you. I think in so many situations, it can give us information and learning, and
Yes.
something that helps us to show up as us moving forward.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know for me, there's always, well, I guess in healthy breakups,
Yeah.
because I've been in the place where I did not handle breakups well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Like,
We all have.
we all have been there. But in healthy breakups, there is always the grieving, the mourning. You talked about like you have to feel the feelings.
Right.
And then when we do that well, I feel like we're able to release and then just realign with the version of us that is ready for love, like
Yeah.
much more quickly. But if you don't feel it,
Right.
it's just going to come out sideways.
Yeah.
And you're going to probably want to like, you'll like shut yourself off to love in different ways because you're
Right.
like scared of it. So anyways, all that to say, as someone who's done it in a healthy way, not healthy, It is so important to feel through, make
Right.
space for the grieving,
And be curious and compassionate with
curious
yourself.
and compassionate.
Yeah, and do things that are going to support you. You know what I was thinking of when you were talking is what came up for me is just values, right? Like
Yes.
um allowing
Ooh, let's
yourself
talk
to
about
go,
that.
yeah, allowing yourself to go through that process, but also seeing who am I trying to be in life? Like, who do I want to be in relationships? Who do I want to be day in and day out? And I think that the more I've gone into values work, like for myself with clients, it's that can just serve in motivating us and helping us in our decision making, right? Like, if I
Yes.
know who it is that I'm wanting to be or the life that I want to have, the romantic life, then when the rejection, when the
Mhm.
arguments, all of those, the breakups happen, then I still have this like compass to help in guiding me.
Yes. Oh, I always talk about this, that you have to build your securely
Yeah.
attached identity,
Yeah.
is what I call it. And yeah, when you have that as your North Star,
Yeah.
and I'll tell clients, you want to know, how do you want to feel in relationships? Like,
Oh,
that's
so
your North
good.
Star, right? And you can look at a relationship and say, well, how did I feel there? Is that what my ideal relationship looks like?
Yeah.
And then the idea is that we move closer and closer to that.
Yeah.
And I always, and this is kind of corny, I don't know what you'll think about this. I
Uh-oh.
feel like you'll be on board.
Uh-oh. Tell me. No, I'm kidding.
My clients, when they're like, they're really wanting to find their person and
Yeah.
maybe they're losing a little bit of hope, I'll tell them, like, hey, let's write a letter
Mm.
to your person. Like, we
Oh,
know
that's
they're out there.
cute.
We know they're looking for you,
Yeah.
right? You exist, so they exist. So I just think it can help our brain if we just write them a letter. And
Yeah. I
you could
love
say, I
that.
hate this dating thing. I wish I had already found you.
Oh, well, that's so Dr. Morgan, you're such a romantic. Look at you. That's so cute. No, I love that actually. No, you're right. I feel like it sort of goes back to, yes, the values piece, but like redirecting our energy, right? Like
Yes.
redirecting our energy and our thought process. And I know we both focus a ton on this, but like the ways that we think, the meanings that we associate to situations
Yes.
about ourselves, about the relationships working or not working, have a significant impact on what we do, right? And so I love
Yes.
that because you're redirecting your attention towards where they're ultimately wanting to get to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm thinking about how I know when I was going through breakups in my 20s and I was a hot mess and I was like on the floor
Oh,
crying my eyes out, eating Ben and Jerry's and
yeah.
like playing the sad love songs on repeat, right? Like,
Yeah.
the story I would tell myself is that I wasn't good enough in some
Yeah.
way, that if only I had done something different, right?
Right.
And it's like, what about the reality? And this is my favorite word for this, is capacity.
Yeah.
What about people who just didn't have the
Capacity.
capacity
Yeah.
to show up and be a good partner and build secure attachment, right? Like,
Yeah.
I call it like a plastic plant
Oh, yeah.
relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, all the plastic plants I cried over, it's like they couldn't grow even if they
Mm,
wanted to.
yeah.
But then I was making it mean something about
Right.
me, right?
Right.
So I love, like, in our 30s now,
Yeah.
like, looking back and being like, "Hey, like, actually, for me, there was a lot of people that just didn't have the capacity to
Yeah.
grow."
Yeah. It's like yeah, as much as you may have tried or wanted them to grow, it's just.
Yeah, putting it in sunlight, dancing for it,
Yeah.
watering it, giving it fertilizer, doing all the things, and it's like, no, it just
But
can't
that's
grow.
even and it's like it's funny because you know what? I mean, not funny, but what comes to mind for me is like I feel like when about relationships, right? Like I've been focusing a lot, and also on my podcast, I had an episode where I was talking about like the difference between settling versus compromising, right?
Yes.
And I feel like, a lot of times I know I've been in situations where I'm like, am I settling or compromising? I know people will ask me this. And like, I feel like this example that you've given is like, when we're trying so hard to get this outcome from this other person, right? Like you're putting all this effort, you're
Mhm.
putting all this energy to change that person's experience. Like I feel like that within itself, right, is information. We may not realize it in that moment, right? But when you take a
Mhm.
step back, it's like that person should come in with some capacity, some availability to be able
Mhm.
to does that make sense?
Oh, it
Like,
does.
yeah, like
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
availability um to meet you where you're at
Yes.
so it doesn't so it feels like okay, this is team effort and we're both equally focused on this plant growing, right? Or whatever,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The
Yeah,
relationship
the
growing.
relationship growing,
Um
yeah. And that's a whole other topic too, which I don't know if you relate to this, but I know, like myself, I was
yeah.
just very comfortable in the caregiver
Yeah.
role and the person doing the emotional
Yeah.
labor.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it was always like that was my comfort
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think it's like, just in the profession that we're in, at least for me, I think,
Yes.
we're supportive.
Do you ever think about, like, if only you could have billed the people for the therapy hours, the people that you dated? I mean, I hate to say it, but sometimes,
Oh my
girl,
gosh,
the
so
thought
funny.
crosses my mind.
Just like send them an
Oh,
invoice.
yeah, all these years
XO,
later.
Dr. Morgan. Minus the XO, but no, that is so funny. No, I mean, I think that's and this is why I love that we're both doing the work that we're doing because I think these are the years of like looking back and the experiences that we have
Yeah.
of like, a big part of it is knowing, like being aware of like what are healthy traits, what is compromising,
Yes.
what is settling, all of these things, what should I be looking for? But I think a big part of it is also looking at ourselves and seeing
Yes.
like who am I? How do I show up? Is this aligned with, not only the relationship that I want to have, but is this aligned with attracting and bringing in that person that I
Yes.
wanna attract and be with. Because I could totally relate. I think a lot of times when I even look back on my own experiences, it's like the ways I was showing up, even though they were always really well-intentioned and supportive, I
Mhm.
don't think allowed for me to experience or have the experiences that I was wanting and for that person to
Yes.
show up in the ways that I was wanting. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
it does
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah, but
And I think it's also and, oh, man, I guess I'm analyzing myself here.
I think
It's like a form of avoidant
yeah.
attachment
Yeah,
because if I'm taking care of you, then you don't have to take care of me. You don't
totally.
have to know my stuff.
Totally, that is true. Well, tell us. Okay, so share. So I know you focus a ton on attachments, but what are the main attachments? Obviously, I'm familiar, but I would love to hear from the expert. Tell me the main attachments.
Okay, you're so
Um,
sweet. I know you know all these, but yes, for the audience, we'll
yeah,
go into it.
yeah. Tell me.
Okay, so we have anxious attachment style, avoidant attachment style, disorganized, and secure. And secure is where we all want to be.
Yes.
I love talking about secure attachment. Um, but anxious, just to sum it up, is where you're placing the relationship above yourself,
Yeah.
essentially. And this looks like maybe sending those 17 text messages and you're not getting a response and
Aw.
you know
Yeah.
we've all been there.
I was gonna say yes.
Catastrophizing, right? Like if you don't hear from them, you're like, "Oh, maybe they met somebody new." Like you're
Right.
always like thinking about how the relationship could end and then oftentimes really connected to fear of
Yeah.
abandonment. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you add to anxious attachment?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the main things of just, constant need for reassurance, really a
Yes.
lot of fear of, what comes up to mind for me is like out of sight, out of mind and fearing like if I'm not there, like,
Yes.
what does that mean? And I think there's a constant need in addition to just the reassurance of like the approval of the, confirmation that this person is
Yes.
interested in me in whatever ways that they may show it.
Thank you, because one way I like to explain this is with anxious attachment, it's like you have a reassurance
Yeah.
bucket and the bucket has holes in it.
Mm.
No matter how much reassurance your partner gives you, it
Right.
doesn't really land.
Yeah.
You don't internalize it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a lot of asking for it over and over.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in general with reassurance, I mean, I feel like you bring up a great point because I feel like when we're constantly outsourcing, right? Like I need that reassurance
Yes.
from these other people or whatever, maybe not even just related to our romantic lives. Oftentimes it doesn't land, right? Like it doesn't
Yes.
land. And I think that can be even just information of like, I just need more reassurance from me. Like I need to feel
Ooh.
more like how do I provide myself that reassurance because I feel like when we outsource so much, it gives that relief, right? And then it's
Yes.
another form of avoidance, really.
Yeah, it's disempowering because
Yeah.
if you think about it, really you know yourself
Yeah.
best. Like you know what kind
Right.
of reassurance you need.
Yeah.
And if you're not learning how to give it to yourself, you're not going to be able to articulate it
Yes.
well to your partner
Yeah.
because you don't even really know. Like,
Right.
so this is why I love self-soothing.
Yeah.
This is a whole other episode, girl. We
Yeah,
could
I know.
go a whole
I was
other.
sorry. I
No, I
totally.
love it
Yeah,
though.
I was like, I took us in another.
No, but it's
Yeah.
good. It's really important for people to understand, especially with anxious
Yeah.
attachment. The growth area is how do I self-soothe,
Yeah.
right? How do I, learn how to accept the reassurance from my
Right.
partner? Yeah.
And let that be. Yeah. So how about avoidant?
Okay, so avoidant attachment, you are prioritizing yourself above the relationship, and then this is a lot of times fear of intimacy. A lot of times it's difficult to sustain a close relationship for
Right.
long periods of time. So this person, you go on a great date with them, and then maybe you don't hear from them for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
when the intimacy, it's like it develops and you feel even closer to that person, that's when they usually will withdraw, right?
Yes, they're withdrawing when
Yeah.
that closeness is really strong.
Which can be so difficult when you're on the receiving end of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I find with avoidant attachment, it's not that they don't want relationships or that they don't want intimacy. A lot of times they have beliefs that they're not a good partner, that they're going to let the other person down, or that person is going to depend on them too much.
Okay.
So fears of losing themselves, fears of
Sure.
losing their independence. Yeah. And this is like the stereotypical person who's like career driven. We see this show up. They'll say, I'm just building my career right now.
Yeah.
I don't have time, and it's like actually a
Right.
great relationship really supports
Yeah,
you in
yeah.
your career.
Yes.
Right? I'm calling myself out. I mean, this was me for a long period of time.
No, I can for sure relate. I mean, I think I want to like, of course there are times where we're more heavily focused on one area, but you're right. I feel like there's always, now being much older, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have prioritized all areas of my life that were so meaningful. And our relationships are such a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So anxious, avoidant, and then disorganized.
Yes, which also is known as fearful avoidant. And this is where you have both anxious and avoidant strategies happening simultaneously. This is that push-pull. I always think of the Katy Perry song, Hot and Cold. Here. I won't sing it. I could. Maybe Sheva wants to sing it.
I'm so good. I was like, where is she about to go with this? But please do share. So you think about Katy Perry.
I do. The hot, you're hot and you're cold. Yes and you're no. And this is just a really confusing attachment style, right? And it's highly correlated with childhood trauma.
Sure.
A lot of instability in relationships where somebody's really present with you and then they're totally out. Yeah. So about 5% of the population. Yeah.
Okay.
Not as common.
Right. And then the obviously secure is where we're all trying to get
Yes,
to.
let's talk about secure.
Yeah. Tell us all about it.
I want to hear your definition too, but yeah, securely attached is where your needs matter and your partner's needs matter, where you can co-create a healthy relationship together and you both really value the intimacy and you value the relationship. And you also are two individuals and take care of yourselves as individuals. This is where you can set boundaries. You have assertive communication.
Right.
Relationships feel good, right? If there is a rupture, repair happens quickly. Relationships add value to your life. So I think secure is where we all want to be.
Totally. I think what comes up for me in addition to what you shared is like there's a trust in you and there's a trust in the relationship as a whole, right?
That's
like
great.
There may be distance, there may be some time, maybe we have a hard period, there's a hard phase that we're going through, and that doesn't completely rock your core, right? Like there's that security in what you know about you, what you know about this person, what you know about the relationship and what you've established.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just talking with Nicole Walters about this, where it's this idea that I'm not going anywhere. Like we talk about we both like found our rocks. Um, and I think for somebody myself who like experienced, different childhood trauma and difficult relationships, like finding that person who's just reliable, consistent, I know they're going to be there. It's been such a corrective emotional experience for me and creating secure attachment.
Yeah, I feel like it's like such a blessing when you find someone who's very secure, and like that within itself provides a safety for you to even become more secure through that
Yes.
relationship. What comes up for me is like oftentimes when people will think like, well, if I'm not secure, does that mean I won't get there? Or do I have to wait to become secure before I jump into a relationship?
Right.
And of course, I think you and I would both agree that it's always important to be doing our own healing,
Yes.
going through our own journey. But also, I feel like there's so much healing that comes within that relationship,
Yes.
like what you're saying.
Yeah, and there's some healing I think
Yeah.
that can only happen
Yeah.
in relationships.
Yeah, when we have
Yeah.
like those experience, it's like sort of like, that exposure, right? To our own
Yes.
fears and having that corrective experience.
Yes. I love that you bring that up because people will always ask that of how do I know when I'm ready to date, or do I need to heal more?
Yeah.
So I do think people need to realize like there's no perfection.
Right.
Even as securely attached, that doesn't mean you're
Totally.
perfect.
Yeah.
Right? You're always learning, you're always growing. But Sheva, I wanted to ask you, as someone who really loves intentional dating
Yeah.
and that topic,
Yeah.
what do you tell people when they ask you, how do I know if I'm ready to date?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think a lot of it comes back to checking in with ourselves and really seeing like, am I in a place for dating, right? Like, what do I actually, am I in a place, do I feel like I'm in a place where I'm open and available to someone else, to being curious about someone else, to establishing a relationship if that's what we're wanting? But I think even before that, it's like asking ourselves, what is it that I'm even wanting, right? Like, is it
Mm.
s- just someone to have fun with? Is it someone to really emotionally and deeply connect? Is it like a partnership, right? I think so often we get into the dating world and we just go and have experiences based on what's happening in front of us, right? You may meet someone and they're like, "Oh, they just want to have fun." And so you may go with that. So it's more of a reaction to someone else
Mm.
versus like, "Oh, I'm clear on what I want and I'm moving forward in that way."
I love it.
I do think I think, when I say like, I feel like many of us do know. I think it's also, of course, some people may be thinking like, no, I actually don't know. Or like, I feel really anxious about it. Maybe I'm not ready. But I think it's also staying with that moment and seeing, okay, is it the worry? Is it the fear that's coming up for me that, this
Yes.
won't go well, or that I'm not ready enough, quote unquote? Or do I genuinely feel like I'm not in the place to be able to connect in the ways that I'm wanting to,
Yes.
right? Like, those are two, because we may still, if we haven't been in the dating market for a while, you may not feel particularly ready, right? Like, you may not feel like confident in that space, but it's when we move forward in ways that are aligned for us that we start to feel more confident.
I love this so much because it's so true. It's
Yeah.
like if it's fear, that's one thing, but if
Yeah.
it's genuine, I don't have the capacity,
Yeah.
I don't have the energy, right?
Yeah.
Then that's another thing. But you'll only know if you pause and take the
Check in.
time to check in with yourself.
Yeah. And then it's like the thing is like we could, I think when we're thinking about intentional dating is really it is really that pause. It is really checking in with ourselves and then seeing like if I am in a place of wanting to date, like what is it that I'm wanting?
Yes, let's
Right?
go back to that because I
Yeah.
love this idea because I always think about, okay, create the standards for
Yeah.
your ideal partner.
Yes, girl.
Hold the standards. Hold the standards. And then I always tell people the relationship space in your life is
Yeah.
sacred space.
Oh, I love that.
It is sacred.
Yeah.
Right? Your energy investment in a relationship is the most important thing. Your
Right.
energy is of such high value.
Yeah.
So honor the space. An empty space is so much better than the wrong person taking up the
totally.
space. Like hold the standards. And this comes from knowing that I am enough without a relationship.
Right.
Because so many of us get in that habit of like, oh, I have to fill the space.
Right.
Right. But just as you're saying, it's like intentional dating, know what you want, have the vision for it.
Right.
and say
Totally.
no when it doesn't align with it.
Yeah, and say no. And I think the other piece is like to your point of like, we fill up the space, but I think it's we just have such a negative connotation associated with being single. Like,
Yes.
and so I think it's even unwrapping that piece of like, what is the story that goes through my mind? And,
Yes.
you know, I am good single or not, like, being in a relationship or not, right? Um, so yeah, going back to that piece of like how we see ourselves and how we see what a relationship can do for us, right? A lot of times we
Yes.
overvalue.
We do. Oh,
Yeah,
and we think that, oh, the marriage, it's like once I'm married, then I'll be
yeah,
happy or then I'll be enough.
right.
And it's like actually, you get to create how you want to feel now.
Yes,
And yes, a partner can come in and they can give you more love,
right.
but I always say, a relationship cannot give you anything that you can't give yourself.
Yeah, no, that's true. No, that
And
is true.
and here's the thing people don't talk about that we should
Tell
talk about.
me.
A lot of married people can miss their single seasons.
Yeah.
Like, they look back on
Oh,
that
no.
time.
Yeah, totally. It's like it's funny because, online dating, I think for many people is like super challenging, right? Like it's
Yeah.
difficult. A lot of times you're on the apps, know what people are looking for, different things. But it's like usually with people who I know who are married and I'll hear about certain experiences. I'm like, that actually sounds fun to them. Or if like they
Right.
going on that first
Yeah,
date
they
or
wanna swipe for you. They're,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
taking your phone, they're
totally.
like, "Let me swipe for you."
That's so funny. No, it's very true. I feel like in every season of our lives, we can think about ways to maximize that experience, right? So it's like
Yes.
even if our intention is to get married, right? And you may not have found your person, um, it's really seeing how can I maximize that experience. And I think also we don't focus a lot on like making ourselves more of the person that we want to be, right? Like
Mhm.
that person that you're wanting to marry, making like checking with her, do you have those traits? And then maximizing that time, thinking about how can I, focus on other areas of my life that are also
Mhm.
meaningful with my girlfriends, with whatever it may be, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, for sure. I feel like there in every season of life, we want to think about how can we make it even more meaningful to us.
Yes. And there's all kinds of love available to us. I think sometimes we're just waiting for the romantic love to
Yeah,
come, but
totally.
you can feel into, friends and family, and it's like love is so available to you. How you love yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I think people sometimes unconsciously, this is not
Yeah.
intentional, but they're just waiting for their person to come in order
Yeah.
to experience love. And it's like, no, love is everywhere.
Oh, wait, but I will say, I think, yeah, a lot of people wait for that person to like show up, right? And like
Yes.
show up in this like really beautiful package, which, sounds
Yeah, like
great. But
Amazon Prime,
yeah,
2-day
Amazon
delivery, just
Prime for
order
sure.
a
But
boo.
yeah, but I feel like with that, it's like, you know, intentionally dating is like putting ourselves out there and actually going after those experiences in the ways that we would like if we're super career oriented, we wouldn't wait for
Yes.
that job to show up, and we would probably get rejected to many
Right.
positions, right? And still you would continue and you would consult and you would check in with I think like giving it that same energy, like of course it's different
Yes.
than our work lives, but really seeing it as a process, right? A process that takes time until we find that right fit, until that person is aligned with
Yes.
our values. I think is so important for sure.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up because I'm sure you see this too. A lot of my clients, they'll approach dating in a way that is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Like I think of it like a gym routine.
Yeah.
If you have to show up, you have to show up consistently for
Right.
long periods of time.
Yeah.
So it can't be that like 4-hour workout.
Right.
Like you can't go on like a weekend of just swiping for hours and hours. Of course you're going to get burnt out.
Yeah.
Like dating has to feel good. It has to feel sustainable. So I feel like it's building that process for you so that you can continue it for as
Totally.
long as you need to.
Yeah, for as long as you totally. And I feel no 100%. You want to show up as your best self and you want to be in that best energy, your most confident self.
Yes.
In dating, it's like, how can I make this fun? Right? Like it's intentional, but we
Yes.
want it to be fun. What I would love to focus on is like I'm huge, and I know similarly for you, but like I'm huge on self-compassion work. Like
Yes.
if you had talked to me 6 years ago, maybe during our post talk, not so much, but
Right.
like, there's been a lot of growth there. But I love self-compassion work and just focusing on self-soothing.
Yes.
And I think dating or not, like if you think about it in your dating process or not, I think this is something that we would all benefit from doing more of. Like even if you
Yes.
feel like you're particularly confident, I think we tend to respond so much more critically, so much more harshly towards ourselves.
Mhm.
So if you're like swiping and it's not working out, like treating yourself if like you would a best friend, right? Like
Yes.
giving yourself the same grace, the same understanding, compassion. Because I feel like if someone were to share with me, like as a friend, like, I've been swiping for 4 hours a day, like a friend would probably tell you, like, no, like go live your life, go do other
Yes.
things. Like this will happen. So I think in those moments, it's so important to like respond to ourselves with greater compassion.
Absolutely. Yes, and I feel like you don't wanna lose other parts of your life, as
Yeah.
you're talking about, like, maintain your life and create the space for it. And I love that idea of, hey, talk to yourself like you would talk to your
Right.
friend. Like, you would hype your friend up. You'd be like,
Totally.
"You are such a freaking catch."
Yeah.
Anybody who
And you
goes
would
on
be
a date with
lucky to
you
date you,
is
which
so lucky.
facts. Yes.
Right? So it's like, yeah, you have to show up that way for you,
Yeah,
like, you have to
100%.
know it.
Yeah. I think if there's one thing that I hope that people take away from our conversation is just like tuning in with yourself, seeing where am I
Yes.
at? What do I need? Right? Like what do I need to feel more supported in this phase of my life? Like, right?
Yes.
In relation to romantic relationships, in relation to speaking up and being more assertive, in relation to my communication, and then just offering yourself those pockets of support throughout the day,
Yes.
and that could mean anything, whatever it's gonna be most supportive to you.
Oh, I love that you brought this up. I wanna give the audience something, like, really tangible that they
Yeah,
can do to apply this.
tell me.
Because with all my clients, I have them do this where you schedule a timer on your phone for 3 times a day, and you're asking yourself 2 questions in a journal, so you're gonna write it down, and the 2 questions are, "What am I feeling?"
Uh-huh.
So be really honest, use the emotion words, "What are you actually feeling?" And then the next question is, "What do I need to feel better supported?"
Oh, I love that.
So I
Yeah.
love when you said that. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I have my clients do. So
Yeah,
throughout the
100%.
day, just tune in, because I think a lot of us got disconnected from ourselves at one
100%.
point,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it doesn't just come naturally to be like, "Oh, what am I feeling?" So for a lot of us, we have to intentionally
Yeah.
reconnect to that inner experience.
Yeah, and I think it like, even if we haven't had gone through a lot of difficulties, maybe throughout our upbringing or whatnot, I feel like in the society that we live in, it's so fast paced. Like with
Yes.
social, it's
Social
easy
media,
to get
yeah.
disconnected at times. Like sometimes, like you may be thinking like, I don't know how I feel, or well, this feels awkward to take this pause. But I agree with you. I think it's just so powerful to like take that moment and just connect with yourself again in a deeper way. Um,
Yes.
and yeah, offer yourself whatever you do need.
Yes, and then when you get really good at doing that for yourself, you're also going to be better able to articulate
Yeah,
what you need to a partner,
totally.
right? And then you're gonna be better able to receive support from a partner as well.
Yeah,
Because I
100%.
think that's also a learning curve of, like, being willing to ask and being willing to receive,
Yeah.
and if you can't do it with yourself, it's gonna be really hard with someone else.
Yeah, I can feel no, totally, it can feel really challenging of, like, how do I even ask for this? What is their response gonna be? I feel like when we are feeling more supported, then you've sort of set the limit of what you're expecting, right? What does that support look like? What should it feel like?
Yeah.
And of course, the support from someone else may feel differently, but you will feel fulfilled in the process.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and when you get good at showing up for yourself, and then you're not only depending on that other person, it
Right.
just takes the pressure off the relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Well, what is one, like if you had to say like your favorite tip for, so let's say someone's getting into the dating world, like what would be the one thing as far as the tip that maybe they should consider or
Mm.
do or think a little bit more about?
I would go back to what we talked about earlier, which is get clear on the vision that you
Yeah.
have, the vision you have for your life, the vision that you have for your ideal partner.
Yeah.
Identify 3 core emotions of
Yeah.
how you want to feel. You wanna feel loved, you wanna feel gently challenged by your partner,
Yeah.
you wanna
That's a
feel
good one.
supported. Um, I really feel like a lot of people don't slow down enough to do that.
I love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so true. It's like I usually will encourage people to think of, like the 10 things that are non-negotiables, the 10 things that are
Yes.
nice to haves, right?
Yeah.
And then I oftentimes will be like, go through it again and see, is this really a non-negotiable? Like
Yes.
usually when people will put things on that are nice to haves, right? And then being clear on like, okay, then what are my top 3 that I need to have in a relationship? Because yeah, that makes it even easier when you're on the day. If like you have, like for me, kindness is super important. So if you're on a date
Yes.
and someone is presenting as the opposite as that, that's going to give you a ton of information of like, oh, well, they
Absolutely.
haven't hit these top 3. But I love that you focus on how you want to feel within that relationship.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
This
totally.
this makes me think too, Shiva, I know you know about this, of Esther Perel's
Yeah,
work around, okay, your romantic partner cannot be everything to you,
totally. Yeah.
right? Like there's
We went to a
certain.
conference together, by the way, on
That's
us as
right.
grad students.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
Yeah.
That's for
Anyway, good
forever.
times, good times. But you
Oh
were
my
saying,
gosh, I love that. So, yeah, it's like I think nowadays a lot of people will put pressure on the
yeah,
relationship to be everything.
yeah,
And no, you have to decide, well, what are the core things I want from my romantic partner?
yeah.
And maybe there's things that I can get other needs met with my girlfriends or my family or
Mhm.
my work life, right?
Right.
Like your romantic relationship cannot meet all of your needs.
No, it's true. I feel like and you have to really see what are my non-negotiables for a romantic
Yes,
relationship.
exactly.
Right? They may be very different than a friendship, and so really being clear on what are my non-negotiables for that relationship.
Yes.
No, I love that. I love that. I think that just having that greater clarity, approaching situations just more intentionally from the beginning, from the outset is so important. And then you'll
Yes.
likely have more of the experiences that you're wanting. And the experiences that don't fit, you'll easily be able to identify it, right? And then
Absolutely.
filter through that. Um,
Absolutely.
which I think could be even helpful in the online world, right? Because people constantly feel like they're constantly filtering, but it's like, what are we filtering? So really being clear on that.
Yes.
I asked you this question, but I didn't really have a response ready. I was like, what would be my number one?
No, I know. I
Uh,
wanted to hear your
yeah, no, but I
response.
actually don't. So let me think about this actually. I mean, as far as the number one tip, I think, what I would say is when you're on the date, checking in with yourself to see how am I feeling with this person. So similar to what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is because I think so often when we go on a date, we want to be liked, like,
Yes.
right? We're focusing, many of us, of like, how am I coming across? How may they be
Yeah.
perceiving
I
me?
hope they like me.
Yeah, I hope they like me. Even if the funny thing is, even if we don't like them,
Yeah,
oftentimes
we're like,
we're hoping that they like us.
it's so true. It's so true.
And like we're trying to anticipate, like, how are they going to respond to this, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to, when you're on the date, really just taking the time to slow down and releasing, how do I feel in this person's presence?
Yes, girl. Yes.
Am I enjoying this time, right? I might not fully
Yes.
know them, but am I curious about them? Do I
Yes.
want to get to know them more? Or do I feel like I need to maybe perform in a certain way or present
Yeah.
in a certain way?
What version of me is
It's
this
coming
bringing up?
through. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, you and I are seeing similar things, but really
Mhm.
tuning in to what is happening for you internally and the ways that you are feeling. I think that can give us a significant amount of information.
It's
Um,
so true. I love, like, even on the date, just taking a moment to
uh,
pause and just be internal. Maybe go to the bathroom, whatever you
yeah.
gotta do, but really, that's such important data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, what it happens is like sometimes you may go on a date where you don't necessarily feel aligned, but then the person may reach out to you after, you may feel really flattered, and those emotions may take over, right?
Right,
And so
right.
it's like we want to be clear at every phase. Like I'm huge on taking inventory, and I think we want to take
Yes.
inventory of our own experiences and of the relationship, even on that first date.
I
Like tune
agree.
in, and
Yes.
then let's take inventory as needed throughout.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love
So
it.
good,
I love it.
but
Um, well, I know we have a little bit more time. I know we could talk for hours.
I know. I was gonna say, I feel like we need to do this many more times.
We need another one, but I wanna just let everybody know once again about your
Oh,
podcast.
thank you.
Tell me some more. She has a wonderful podcast out.
Thank
You can find it everywhere podcasts are aired. And I know it's just incredible content. So if you liked our conversation today, please make sure that you're tuning in to Dr. Shiva's show. And then I also have a question that I always ask
and Dr.
guests.
Morgan's podcast. So please check in. I think both of us, and I would love for you to share a little bit more about Let's Get Vulnerable, but I think both of us are super passionate about relationships and showing up
Yes.
authentically. So you can probably find similar conversations on both of our podcasts.
Yes, and, I will say that Dr. Shiva is just a phenomenal human being,
Oh,
so much integrity,
oh,
so much fun, and I know that she really teaches things in a way that you just relate to it and you get it, so I highly recommend her
you're the
show.
best. Thank you. Oh,
Yes.
I feel the same way. I was literally gonna be like, you are literally the best. Thank you. She's so supportive. I think I've loved your show, and I've just been so inspired with everything that you've been doing. And I know you've been helping so many people. So I'm just grateful to be doing this with
Oh
you.
my
And
gosh,
just
it's so
so
fun.
what a blessing to have you in my life.
I
Thank
love
God for
it.
that postdoc year.
I love it, I love it. Okay, and I have one question I
Sure.
always ask guests.
Yeah.
So you're walking down the street
Okay.
and random person comes up to you and they're
Okay.
asking you for your best life advice of the moment. This doesn't have to be like of all time, but what would you say to that person today?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Okay, so someone asks me for my best life advice. Okay. What I would say is you're right on time. You're not late. I mean, that sounds so
Ooh, I
cheesy.
love that though.
Um, I think, we can feel so pressured to want to hit a goal or to feel like we needed to have achieved something by a specific, milestone that's been identified by society.
Yeah,
And so I feel like regardless of wherever you are in your journey, career, health, romantically with yourself, reminding yourself that this is part of your journey and it will happen
I
wherever
love
you're trying to get
that.
to. So you're right on time.
You're right on time.
Yeah.
Trust the process.
Yeah. Trust the process.
Oh my gosh.
Let me ask you one question also that I end with, and then we
Okay.
will
I
actually,
love
yeah.
it.
Because now I'm curious, what would you say to your younger self?
Ooh. This is so funny, Shiva. You
Yeah.
will appreciate this. The first thing that came to mind was make sure you get like a good person to do your eyebrows.
What?
Like that's literally what came to mind because I had nobody to get my eyebrows like that knew how to wax my eyebrows. But anyways, okay, on a more serious note,
Oh my gosh, that was too good.
eyebrows
Okay, so
are
now
important.
yeah, that is very true.
I know for
That
both
is
of us,
true,
okay?
yes.
But other than that,
So in addition to that life-changing advice, what else would you tell her?
okay. Other than that, I would say that I just needed to know that I was enough,
Mm,
that there was nothing wrong with me, that I was so worthy of love, and just that my early childhood experiences did not define
mm,
what relationships could be.
yeah,
That even though I had really difficult relationships early on, that had nothing to do with what was possible
right.
for me in
I
relationships.
love that, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're an inspiration. I love that you said that. I think you've definitely demonstrated just the ability to just have such amazing relationship, but just who you are. And I've seen you grow so much and just it's amazing seeing more and more of who you are. So it's shining through. So it's really
Thank
nice.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So find a good person to do your eyebrows, and trauma doesn't define you. Both of those
Yeah.
things.
And you can ultimately change your experience at any time.
Yes,
So
you
I think
can.
it's
It's
like,
never too late.
yeah, it's never too late. We always have choice. So I think becoming
Yes.
clear and realizing that there's always a choice point and we can make a different
Yes.
choice. And so
Yes.
remembering that. But
Absolutely. Well, this has been so much fun. We have to do
this
it
was
again.
so much fun. I love this. Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. Yeah,
Yes,
we'll
I'm
have to do it again.
we absolutely will.
Dr. Maureen, why don't you share where people can find you?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram
Yeah.
at Dr. Morgan Coaching, Dr. Morgan Coaching. And then my podcast is the Let's Get Vulnerable
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah.
Love it.
And you as well. Sure.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Dr. Sheva, and I'm on everywhere where podcasts are shared. Tell me some more with Dr. Sheva.
Yes. And
So,
everyone go follow her if you're not already, and make sure
uh,
you subscribe to her show. And I know we're going to have more collabs in the future because we just
yeah.
had so much fun.
No, this was so much. We have to do it again.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
And I know that we're both wishing you high self worth and great relationships. Until next time.
Take care, everyone.